Okay, so the purpose of this session today is to go through what's available in terms of managing live classroom sessions using Fusion. And I'm not going to just limit it to using our own inbuilt mltv, which is the live tool that's available on the system, but I'm also going to open it out to integrating other forms of live webinar that exist out there, including Teams, Google, and Zoom as well. Okay, so firstly, what I'll do is take everyone through the process of using mltv with students and think throughout this session how we might manage that to make it easier for the teacher, easier to focus your students, easier to make the session work for everyone. I've come into this system as a teacher, and what I want to do is set up an mltv session with my students. So if I go into my classes, I have a class here called 10EN2, a Year 10 English group. And I'm going to set up 3 different types of session for this group. I'm going to set up an mltv session, and I'm also going to set up a Teams and a Zoom session for this group, so we can see the difference between them and how they work. So firstly, let's look at the mltv. Now, I can do lots of things to set up this session in advance. I can set a calendar event for my students to remind them that they need to do that. So I can go to the system calendar, and I can go to the date that I want to set my session up. Click the plus to add a new session. And what I want to do is a group event. So the groups are here, and all I will do is choose my group, group 10EN2, and create a group event. And I'll just remind them that I have an mltv session at this time for class EN2, and I can just fill in the details of that. So I can say that it's at 3 p.m. today for 1 hour. Okay, and that's all we really need to do, mltv session, and I can save that group event. And that will remind my students that they have that event at that time. And only the members of that group will see that calendar event. So that's the first thing I can do. Let's go back to my class. Let's go into my class. And you can see that as a teacher, I have access to mltv from inside the class group. I've also got a couple of accounts up and running here on the side. So if I go here, I'll just bring in a window. So this is my student, William Fry. It doesn't matter whether he's using a button theme like this or a dashboard theme. If he goes to his classes and he goes into his group 10EN2, he also has the opportunity to go into his mltv session. Now, at the moment, you can see the room is offline, and that's because the teacher has not started the session. So the teacher comes in here. They can either go here into the class and click on this icon, or they can go to the class options menu and join the room that way. So I'm going to go in as a teacher. I'm going to click to join the room. Just incidentally, you can see that there's a previous recording for this group sitting here at the bottom as well. But I'm just going to go in and join this room. I'm just going to add a couple of people. Bear with me a second. Okay, so my users have the option to join the session using headphones and microphone. If you want to have that two-way discussion with your students, I would suggest that you and they join with a microphone. Some schools choose to tell their students to join with listen only, so that the teacher is effectively broadcasting to the students. And that is one way of managing the students during the session. If you really do want to just broadcast and give that information out, you can allow them to join with listen only. I'm just going to join with microphone right now. And you can see here, what it's doing is it's asking me what I want to join with, which form of audio. I've actually got 2 microphones plugged in, so I'll just leave that one. And I have to allow my microphone. And the students have to do that too. And I've joined the conference. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with mltv, how many of you have actually used mltv. It's a product that's plugged into Fusion. It's based on a product called Big Blue Button, and it's set up specifically for teaching and learning. That's what it was designed for. And I'll take you through some of the functionality on here. What I'm also going to do, or try to do on the side, is I'm going to try to add my student. If I just refresh the page here, I'm just going to try and add my student to this session as well on a different browser, just so you can see the effect. And now the student can see that they can enter the room because the teacher is in the room and the room has been opened. And the student gets exactly the same screen as the teacher. How would you like to join? Microphone or listen only? Just to keep things simple for the purposes of today, I'm going to join in with listen only. Okay, but you can see that I'm in there as the teacher, William's in there as the student, and I'm ready to start teaching the session. And here's William's login. He's also experiencing the session with the teacher and himself. What I need to do now is just go through all the things that are possible and what you can use in here. So the first thing is we have a public chat. So anyone can add to the public chat as you go through. And students can send messages to each other, to the general room full of people. To get rid of this panel, I just click on here and it goes away, so it's controllable. There's also a shared notes panel that allows anyone in the room to write into it. So it's like a little shared wiki panel where people can all contribute to typing something into this shared notes panel. And it's just a very basic editor. And again, I can just close it here. I also have the option, I don't know if many of you are aware of this, to create breakout rooms. And if I just go into this and click on it, what you have here are two rooms, room 1 and room 2. I can take all my users and just drag them into these rooms. I can change the number of rooms that are available, and I can also change the duration. So I can make this just 5 minutes long. And when you add someone to a breakout room and say create, your users are sent away to the breakout room, and the breakout room looks just like this. They have another whole environment with another place to share information at the edge. And at the end of the breakout session, they're returned to the main session. So it's an extra thing that you can do, is send students off in small groups to talk to each other and to come to conclusions, to draw, to write lists, to do whatever they want to do, to share information and discuss. You will want some control over this. You will want to know what your students are doing. You will want to be able to control that. The first thing is that your students can enter with a camera. So I'm just going to go back to William's login. So I'm now in as the student. At the moment, his sound is turned off, which is good. And I'm just going to turn on his webcam. Okay, and again, it allows him to, it asks him to allow that camera. And it's finding the webcam, and it was up to 3 times you get asked to allow your camera. Okay, so William is now sharing his camera. So William's camera is just loading up here. Now this is me, obviously, because it's the same computer, so I can see. There's a few changes coming to Fusion. At the moment, if your students are using their camera, you can have 30 children in here all sharing their camera. And you can imagine that actually causes some issues. That starts to use up bandwidth. And as of next week, what we're going to do is we're going to limit the number of webcams that appear on the screen. If a presenter is using their camera, their presenter will always stay on the screen. The presenter's camera will be there, but the students will only be able to see up to 5 camera feeds. This is a really good way of limiting the bandwidth that's being used, and it can actually limit the bandwidth by about 60%. The other thing we're going to do, at the moment a student can choose to join with full HD, very high quality HD video. There's actually no benefit or need to do that in a normal classroom setting. So we're limiting the ability to join with that very high HD. The normal level that you join the session is actually perfectly high enough for anyone to use. The new version is also going to optimize the quality. So if your bandwidth is particularly low, it will bring down the quality of the picture and the sound. I can just turn off the camera. Cameras are a little bit distracting, I find. It's nice when you go into a session with your students to show cameras, to talk to them, to be able to see. And it's nice for the children to be able to see your face. But there's actually not always a good need to share cameras with everyone. Just like it's not always a good idea to have all the students' microphones open all the time, because microphones and cameras create noise, both physical noise and also just distraction. So you need to have a level of control over this session. You need to feel that you are on top of that. And there's some things you can do for that. You can go to this button here which says Manage Users, and you have some options here. Now at the moment I have muted everyone in my session, and I can turn that off. Okay, so I can mute all the users except me, the presenter, or I can choose to mute absolutely everyone, including myself. Students are able to put their hand up, or rather change their icons here. So if I go in to William again, William can come in here and set his status, so he can raise his hand to ask a question. He can show that he's confused. He can do a thumbs up or thumbs down. So if you very quickly want to ask if everyone understood, you can just say, give me a thumbs up if you understood that. And that changes his icon. Going back to the teacher, you can now see that William's got a thumbs up icon there. And I have the option here to clear all those status icons. So once I've asked for a thumbs up and everyone does it, I can then just clear that down and it goes back to their initials. So you can use that to ask your students to raise their hands if they want to ask a question. The other option you have here, which I would use right at the start of the session when you go in, is to lock your viewers. So you have the ability to stop your students sharing their webcams. You can stop the students seeing each other's webcams. And again, that really limits the bandwidth. So if your students are at home and their internet's not great, that's doing them a favor, really. You can stop students sharing their microphone. So you can just stop that chatter going on. You can stop them adding anything to the public chat, the chat that I showed you at the beginning. You can stop them sending private chat messages to each other. You can stop them using the shared notes, again, which I showed you earlier. And you can stop them seeing who else is on the list of attendees. So you have quite a lot of control over your students, and it's really good at the start of the session just to go in there as a teacher and take control. Okay, so that's the first thing. You come in, you've got your students coming in, they're coming in with whatever setting you want them to have. So you are then in control of them. Let's briefly go through what they can do in this session, or what you can do rather. Starting at the top, you can record a session unless you're using the free version of mltv. Now there are lots of tiers of use of mltv. The free version allows you to have a single room for your whole school, and up to 35 users are allowed in that room, and you will not be given the option to take a recording of the session. But if you are paying for your mltv service, you will have a number of users that you can use at any one time, depending on which tier you're on. And if you are using one of those, you will get this option to record your session. You click here to start the recording, and at any point during the session, you can come in and pause and then restart it again. So if you're having a bit of a chat with the students in the middle of the session, you can just stop that recording and start it when you begin to present again. There's a plus sign down here, which allows you to quickly start a poll. So again, if you want to gather opinion, if you want to find out if the students understood something, you can just start a poll. Allow the students to give you, for example, a yes/no answer, a true, false, or you can get them to choose a multiple choice. So you can have a multiple choice question pre-prepared as part of your presentation. Go to that page, start off the poll, and wait for your students to respond. Okay, I'm in as William here. Let me just pull it up. And you can see he has his polling options here. He gives the answer B. You can now see the results. And when your students have all voted, you can publish the polling results. You can also see who's responded and what answer they gave. If I just publish those results, it appears here for myself and all my students. When I'm finished with the polling, I just close to turn it off. The next thing I can do is upload a presentation. So you can upload a presentation as part of this session. And that presentation can be of any form. I would recommend PDFs, they work best. And you can bring in your PDF into the session. Now, I'm just going to very quickly and briefly see if I can go and find a learning resource that I can put in here. Let me just click upload. Here we go. It's converting the file from a PDF to the sort of internal file that they have in here. And they're now showing that. And I can scroll through the pages of this document. So this is an example of an exam paper. I can work through these exam questions with my students in the session. As part of that, I also have some annotation tools. So I have some text so I can type on the page, lines and shapes, and a pencil. So I can come in here and answer some of these, which is not easy when you're using a mouse actually. It's much easier if you're using a tablet and you can just draw on the screen. I also have the option of opening up the whiteboard to my students, so I can turn on the multi-whiteboard. And now when I go on here, you can see that it's me that's using this pen. But if I also go in on my other screen with William, you can see that William is now using the pen. You can turn that off. You can clear all annotations. So that's the ability to bring in a document. You can also share a video by putting in a YouTube link into this box, and that will put a YouTube video up on the screen which the students can share with you. Other options, so this is my sharing the webcam option, but I can also share my desktop, which is what I'm doing with you in this Zoom session. So it's very handy, you know, if you've got a PowerPoint, for example, where you've got some nice animations built into the PowerPoint. If you were to upload the PowerPoint into here, it would flatten that file. You wouldn't be able to see the animations. So what you can do is show your desktop and then play the PowerPoint on your desktop, and the students will get the full effect of your desktop. Any recording that you take will also show your desktop. Okay, and that's really all there is to it. Go in there with colleagues, go in there with other people and practice before you get your students in. Once the students are in, again, it's a matter of taking control, and you might be more comfortable if you share your screen and then just work with the screen in front of you, which is quite nice. Okay, so when you've finished with a session, a really important thing to do for a couple of reasons is to go in here and end the meeting. That's absolutely vital. It's really important that you do that for two reasons. One is that it ends the recording that's going on, and it tells the system that the recording has now finished and the recording starts processing. The recording can take a long time to process, depending on how busy all the servers are. So you might have to wait up to 24 hours to get the recording, but they do arrive. The other thing is that it ends the meeting and it kicks out the students, so there's nobody left in the room. So it's really important to do that when you're finished. But yeah, so let's end the meeting. And what it does is it ends the session, all the students are taken out of the room, the session has ended, and it goes back to this screen. If you just close this screen, you find yourself back in Fusion. Any questions about mltv before we move on to looking at how you can use the other systems in Fusion? Any observations or questions? Yes, recordings. Let me just go back to recordings. So I've had a question which is, can recorded sessions be exported? So let's go back to my classes. Here's class 10EN2. Let's go down to join the mltv room. And this is where the recordings are. Now, you can play back a recording. That's the first thing. You can save a recording into this class, which I'll show you in a second, but it saves it into a folder in your class. You can view a link to the recording, and that link, you can send, anybody can view this. You don't have to be logged into Fusion to view the recording using this link. And you can send the link by mail. So if you're asking the question, Dave, can I download this as an MP4 video file? The answer is not yet. I've just been speaking with people this morning, and it looks like we're looking at the end of October. By the end of October, we should be able to have the option to download this recording as an MP4 video file, which will be nice when we get there. But at the moment, this recording has actually been saved to the class. So if I go right into the class, one of the folders here is mltv recordings, and in there you can see a copy of that recording. And if your students click on it, it opens up the session and they watch that recording back. Let's look at your other options that are not mltv. And you do have other options. So does your school use Teams, Microsoft Teams? Does your school use Google? Or does your school have a Zoom account? Schools use all of those things, and they often ask how they can best integrate using those external systems with Fusion. mltv is designed for using with a classroom of students, and it works at its optimum, at its best, with groups of about 30 users. So what I would say is, if you're using your mltv at a classroom level for doing class-based sessions, it's absolutely perfect. It's secure, the students come into their class, they're instantly identified, they're not identifying themselves when they come into the session. So it's got a higher level of security than the other systems. You know who you're getting in your sessions, and that's great. If you have Teams, what you can do with your Teams session is that every Teams meeting that you set up has its own link. Let me just move this file onto your screen. So if you have a Teams meeting and you open up the calendar event that's created with your Teams meeting, you'll be able to get this link out of it. Okay, so if I wanted to create a Teams meeting, I've gone into my class. In fact, let me just go back to classes, just so you can see where I am. I've gone into classes, I've gone into that class, and I want to add that Teams session to my class. I just click New File. I choose Teams. I'm just going to go and grab that link and paste it into this box. Okay, so there it is. And say continue. So the name of my Teams calendar event, I want to be able to say to my students, this is Teams session Wednesday 1 p.m. And then there's a description, and again, the description is what you want it to be. You don't have to accept what's been put here. And there's some tags there if you want to tag this with a particular topic or something else. And say continue. And what it does is it drops that file into your class area. And it's nice, and it's quite obvious because of the name of the file when that session is. I've actually put that information in there for my students so that when they come into their class, they can see when exactly this session is. You can also do a calendar event and attach this file to the calendar event if you want. so that students know that there's a calendar event at this time, and they know there's a team session, and they know to go to their class to click and join that session, just like they would have done with mltv. Let's have a look at Zoom. So let's say I wanted to do a Zoom session. Again, go to the class, go to New File, click on Zoom. Now Zoom is slightly different. With Zoom, you have the meeting invitation, which you are given by Zoom. This is the text that you are given to download when you create a Zoom meeting. And what you should do is copy the whole lot, absolutely all of it. Pop it into this box, so it's all there, and say continue. And it's your time to make that file name. So this is Wednesday, 2 p.m. or 1400 hours, whatever it happens to be, Zoom, you know, whatever you want to call it, so that your students understand what they're doing. So you can see here that a Zoom file has been generated in this class, ready for students to click on. And when they click on that, just like Teams, it will take them to the Zoom website where they can go to their Zoom meeting. Now, the other nice thing is that when you've created one of these in your class or wherever you put it, that is now a file on Fusion, and you can use that file anywhere on Fusion that you like. So you could choose to come in here, set some homework for 10EN2, for example. Okay, so you can actually say when it is. So this is the name of my homework, Wednesday the 16th, 1 p.m. So you can put that sort of information in here. You can put anything you like into the description. Okay, so you can give them some instructions on what you want them to do. Related subject is English, yeah, that's fine. Homework dates are fine. Finish. Okay. So what I do when I get to the second page is I can add that file. So I can go in to get my file from the VLE, and I can go to my classes and I can add in that Teams file. And that can be added to the homework. I can also bring in something else. I can bring in a Word document or something for them to read beforehand. So that basically what I'm doing is I'm attaching that live session to the homework, and I'm telling the students when it's going to be. And the students will then see that in their homework list. Bring my student in. Okay, so he can go to his homework, and there listed in his homework is that session. He can go in and open it up, and there's his Teams link. If he clicks on that Teams link, it will give him some options on opening Microsoft Teams. So he can open it in the app, he can continue in the browser, or whatever he wants to do. Okay, but that just takes the students straight to that Teams session. In terms of that, that's all the sort of technical stuff of how to use mltv and how to use Teams and Zoom and Google as well. Actually, I didn't mention Google. Let me just very briefly go in. I don't have one that's pre-prepared, but if I go into my class here, if I wanted to add a Google one, I say new file, and there's a Google Meet option here. And what it's asking you to do, it tells you what to do. It's very clear. You put the meeting link provided by Google into this box. And there is a lot of help. There's a link here to the Google Meet site, and there's also a link here that explains how to schedule a Google meeting. So there's lots of help there for you as you're using the system. So the next thing is to think about how you use this stuff. Now we've got a whole range of schools, types of schools, size of schools that have been using live classrooms, and I'm often asked, what's the best way to use them? How do you best go about using these sorts of services? And I've had lots of feedback from people, but and I don't pretend to be an expert on this, but I have read a lot around it. I have talked to a lot of teachers in live sessions, and there is definitely some learning that's come back from doing these sessions. There's things that people have told me and things that I've learned. The first one is that I wouldn't recommend necessarily having very long mltv or live classroom sessions. You're often told when you're recording videos that the optimum time limit for videos that you want people to watch is about 4 minutes. That's the attention span when somebody is passively watching a video. Now, obviously, if you're in there as a teacher and you're interacting with your students, you're going to get a longer period of interest and engagement from your students. But I would still limit it to about 20 minutes. And it's not a problem, because what you can do is set up homework or task lists for your students. So introduce the lesson, introduce the topic, tell them about what you want them to do, give them that social interaction, and then send them off to do some work. And by all means, come back at the end of the session for questioning, for the students' chance to question you, but also you to question them, to do your assessment, to work out what your students know and don't know. So you can sit on there, you can sit in that live session for the entirety of the lesson, but I would recommend giving the students a mix of activities, getting them to go in, do a bit of live lesson, and then send them off to a task list. Send them off to do some work. So if I just show you what a task list looks like, here's all the things that the students have to do in a long list. You can say to them, okay, I want you to do numbers 3, 4, and 5 today. Go off and do that. And you as a teacher can track your students. You can see how far they've got. You can watch what they're doing in real time. You've also got the option, when you're working in real time, of using the chat facility on Fusion. So one of the options we have is chat rooms, which may or may not be switched on in your school. But when you're in the middle of a live session, you can work with the students using your live video feed to start with. But when you send them off to do their other work, what you can do is you can create a chat room during that time. So it could be for this class, and I can open up the room and create the room. And there is this live chat room that the students can enter and go into. Okay, so I can go into that room, and it's just a chat. It's just like the chat that we've got on mltv, where the students and you can talk during the session. You can send messages. They've also got emoticons and things on there if they want to use those. Okay, that sort of thing. So you can see that's how it's used. It's very simple, but you can also explain to your students that there is a transcript. We've got evidence of what you do, so please don't abuse this system. And you, the teacher, can manage and moderate this. But it's just another option. It's another option for you to have this open when you're not using the mltv, and just let your students know that they can use that. So basically what I would say to you is, by all means, use whatever form of live video that's available to you, that you're comfortable using. You can integrate that with Fusion. You can drop files into classes, and we can use them anywhere. We can attach them to homework, attach them to a task list. We can do whatever we need to with them, as well as using the inbuilt mltv on our system. I would say, if you're going to have a mass broadcast, let's say school leadership wants to talk to all the teachers, I would actually, in that circumstance, probably choose to use Zoom for that, just as a one-off. And it's just a good idea to use something other than mltv for that sort of activity. Okay, so if there's no questions, thank you very much for attending. You'll be given a link to this session at the end It will be sent by email afterwards, and this session will also go up on our wiki, so you can watch it back and find that information later on. But thank you very much for attending.